Hey everyone, sorry I wasn't able to make it today. Something came up last minute, so I will not be at school today. So today's lesson is going to be I can simplify expressions with exponents. So yesterday we kind of dealt with evaluating expressions with exponents. Now we're going to talk about how to simplify them. Okay, so there are three different rules or properties that we will talk about in this lesson. The first is called the power of powers product of powers property. So here's what this means: to multiply powers with the same base. Remember we talked about base yesterday. The base is this number right here, right? So that's the base. To multiply powers with the same base, all you're going to do is add their exponents, and the base stays exactly the same. So if I have 4 squared times 4 to the 4th, that means this is going to be 4 to the 6th. Why is this? Well, here's why. Well, in this right here, 4 to the power of 2, how many 4s do I have? Then I would have 2 4s, right? Because I have 4 to the power of 2. In this one, you would have how many 4s? 1, 2, 3, and 4. So if I were to add all of these up, you would end up with 6 4s. Therefore, it's going to be 4 to the 6th power. All right, here's the next rule we are going to learn: the power of a power property. To find the power of a power, you are going to multiply the exponents. So for example, here in this problem, if I have 4 squared, all of this raised to the 4th power, this is going to be 4 to the 8th. Right, so be careful with the difference between the first rule we learned and the second rule we learned. They are a little different. So why is this one multiplying whereas the other one was adding? Well, remember, this is what? 4 times 4. Right, so I have a 4 times 4 in parentheses like this. So how many groups of 4 times 4 do I have? Well, I have 4 groups. Here's my second group, and here's my third group, and here's my 4th group. If I were to add the number of 4s from here, right, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Therefore, it's going to be 4 to the 8th power. So make sure you know the difference between the product of powers and the power of a power. And the last rule we will talk about today is the power of a product property. To find the power of a product, find the power of each factor and simplify. Or I would actually say the proper word is probably going to be evaluate. All right, so what is this? If I have two numbers like this, or if I have a variable on the inside, I'm going to distribute this 5 to both of those numbers on the inside of my parentheses. So I'm going to have 3 to the 5th and 2 to the 5th power. So if I have 3 to the 5th power, right, so from here you have to evaluate this. So 3 to the 5th is going to be, you could use a calculator to help you out, 243. And then you have to raise 2 to the 5th power. If you raise 2 to the 5th power, it's also, not 253. It's going to be 32. I don't know why I wrote that. Right, so now I have to do 32 times 243. And if you multiply these two numbers out, you get 7,776. Of course, you will be allowed a calculator anytime you're dealing with large numbers like this. However, sometimes when you're dealing with smaller numbers, it's probably faster if you don't use a calculator. Okay. All right, so now why don't let's do this first example together. So if I were to do this, remember, if you have the same base and you're multiplying, all you are doing is you're going to add your exponent. So this would be 2 to the 9th power. This one right here, you're like, well, what exponent is a -5? Well, the exponent of -5 is just 1. Right? So if I have -5 to the 1 times -5 to the 6th, you get -5 to the 7th. Okay. All right, next let's talk about finding power of a power. Remember, this is like distributive property. You're going to be multiplying your exponent, so this is going to be 3 to the 12th. And you can leave it as 3 to the 12th. All right, and this one right here, w5 to the 4th power. Remember, you're going to be distributing or multiplying that outside exponent, so it's going to be w to the 20th. Okay. All right, last example of power of a product. So remember, you're going to distribute to everything on the inside. So if I have this, it's going to be 2 cubed x to the cubed. Right, and 2 cubed, that's 8. So 8x cubed as my simplified expression. Next over here, remember you have to distribute to everything on the inside. So I'm going to have 3 squared x squared y squared. 3 squared is equal to 9. So I can rewrite this as 9x squared y squared as my final expression. All right, so now here's what I want you to do on your own. What might be helpful is label each rule. So if this is rule number 1, rule number 2, and rule number 3, why don't you go ahead and go through each problem here on your own and label which rule that it's going to follow. So for example, in number 1, if you have 2 with the same base, this looks like it's going to follow rule number 1, right? Whereas in number 6, it looks like I'm going to be, right, that's very similar to rule number 2. So I'm going to write the number 2 next to this problem. Whereas in problem number 7, it looks like I have multiple things on the inside of my parentheses. So that looks like rule number 3. That's going to help you identify which rule you're going to use to simplify the exponents. So why don't you do these 9 problems on your own, see how you did. If you feel comfortable, you may begin on your homework. If not, try to go back and rewatch which rule you're struggling with so that you are being successful moving forward. Hopefully I'll be back tomorrow. If not, I will see you on the next school day that I can. Bye everyone.